You always knew they were watching. The resistance, the opposition, the subtle attempts to make life just difficult enough to break you, it was all part of the game. But then something changed. The shadows that once followed your every step suddenly vanished. The pressure that once tried to crush you has been replaced with something far more insidious: admiration, opportunity, access. The same system that tried to erase you now welcomes you with open arms. Why? Because they have realized something terrifying. You cannot be stopped. They see what you have become. They see the fire in your spirit, the divine mission written into your soul. And now they want to claim it as their own. They disguise their chains in gold, hoping you will mistake enslavement for elevation. But you were never meant to be controlled. You are not another piece in their game. You are the disruption they never accounted for. The warrior they could not break. The light they could not extinguish. This is where the real battle begins, not against intimidation, but against assimilation. Because the greatest test is not surviving the war. It is refusing to accept a throne in a kingdom that was never yours to serve. And this moment, this is your proving ground. Stand firm, take your place, lead the charge. The army moves at your command. The calculations were made long before you realized you were a factor in their equation. From the beginning, you were an anomaly, something they could not predict, a variable that refused to be controlled. That is why the obstacles appeared. Paths that once seemed open slammed shut before you arrived. Allies withdrew without explanation. And those you trusted suddenly spoke in warnings laced with doubt. The mechanism they built does not declare its enemies. It simply applies silent pressure until they vanish. But you did not vanish. You pushed forward despite the fractures, enduring every unspoken attack. Each snare set against you unraveled before it could tighten. Your persistence was never part of their design, and the moment you refused to be erased, the rules changed. The same forces that sought to suppress you now extend their hand, no longer hostile, but inviting. The threats soften into persuasion. Resistance turns to opportunity. Their nature is not just destruction, it is assimilation. What they cannot eliminate, they seek to absorb. There was never a moment of randomness in this. Every challenge was a test, every hardship a measurement of your endurance. They observed, recalculated, and when it became clear that you would not break, they adjusted their approach. The hunter abandons pursuit when the prey is no longer prey. It becomes something worth capturing for a different purpose. Isolation was meant to force you to the margins, yet when you remained standing, they redirected their efforts. The same figures who barricaded your way now insist they always recognized your potential. Success was only acknowledged once it became undeniable. This is when the tactics shifted, the opposition faded, resistance dissolved. Instead came admiration cloaked in strategy. They speak of your talents, your natural ability, your destined path. But this is no celebration of your triumph. It is a maneuver. Those in power do not extend their embrace without motive. And if they suddenly seek to include you, it is not out of reverence. It is out of necessity. The years spent pushing through shadows, enduring the unspoken barriers, the quiet denials. None of it was coincidence. The objective was exhaustion, a gradual erosion meant to wear you down. And just as the weight should have collapsed upon you, the message arrives. An invitation, a gesture, an acknowledgement that was never there before. The very ones who turned away now claim to see your value, offering what was once kept from you: access, resources, visibility. The reversal is framed as recognition, but it is something else entirely. If you were truly meant to rise, why did they only step forward now? Where was their support when every step forward was a battle? The truth is simple. This was never about rewarding your effort. It is about control. They see your reach expanding, your strength forming outside their jurisdiction. Influence that is cultivated outside their system is dangerous. And so they do not fight it. They integrate it. They do not wait for a storm to gather force. They redirect it, disguise its captivity as elevation, binding it within gold rather than chains. They lay the contract before you like an altar draped in gold, whispering of all the treasures it holds. No more struggle, no more waiting. Everything you have fought for, right there within your grasp. But something deeper stirs within you, something ancient, something divine. This isn't a blessing, it's a transaction. And the currency? It isn't money, nor is it power. It's something far greater, something eternal. A man does not realize he is caged if the prison walls are invisible. A slave does not recognize his chains if they are woven from comfort and praise. The snare is subtle, wrapped in silk, baited with the very desires you once prayed for. It is not an attack, it is a seduction. They do not take you by force. They make you want to walk in willingly. They do not strike you down. They extend a hand that feels like grace, but moves like a serpent in the grass. At first, there is nothing but ease. Doors swing open without effort. Voices of influence call your name with reverence. The ones who once opposed you now stand in awe, speaking of your brilliance, your destiny, your place among the chosen. They offer you a seat at the table, a throne within their kingdom. But it is not a kingdom built on truth. It is a kingdom of compromise. The world they rule is built on shifting sand, yet they promise you stability. It is built on deception, yet they promise you vision. But what is the true cost? The terms will never be spoken outright, never printed in black and white. They are whispered between the lines, hidden in the weight of expectation. At first, the asks are small. Smile when you are told, adjust your words ever so slightly, soften the message just a little. Do not speak on things that make them uncomfortable. Do not question what they celebrate. It feels harmless, even strategic. But slowly, the small changes build into something unrecognizable. You wake up one day and realize the truth. You are not walking your path anymore. You are walking theirs. You were not invited because they value you. You were invited because they saw something in you that they could use. Your name carries weight. Your presence draws attention. Your influence reaches where theirs does not. They do not need your voice. They need your obedience. They do not seek to partner with you. They seek to possess you. They do not uplift. They consume. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. And so, the choice is laid before you, as it has been laid before many before you. You can take what they offer, step into their system, enjoy the wealth, the admiration, the applause. You can tell yourself you will remain unchanged, that you will hold on to who you are, that you will navigate their world without losing yourself. But that is the greatest deception of all, because no man walks into the den of wolves and leaves with the heart of a lamb. They will tell you, this is what you were meant for. They will say you are stepping into your higher calling. But the spirit within you speaks a different word, because true elevation does not come from their tables, their circles, their wealth. It does not come from agreements forged in secrecy, from alliances that demand your silence, from riches that come at the cost of your soul. It comes from the one who called you before they ever knew your name. And that is why they fear you, because they know you are not theirs to claim. The army does not kneel before the enemy. The chosen do not bow to the counterfeit. This is the moment of decision. Choose wisely. Enemies rarely arrive with fire and fury, nor do they storm through doors with blatant threats. That is not how control is established. They do not appear as adversaries, but as allies, dressed in influence, extending hands coated in reassurance. They present themselves as guides, visionaries, those who recognize potential and seek only to nurture it. Their words are polished, effortless. Your work is brilliant, your path undeniable. We want to help you reach even further. And just like that, they are no longer distant forces, but trusted confidants. It starts as an introduction, a meeting over hushed conversations, an invitation to spaces where few have walked, a chance encounter with those whose names turn doors into gateways. No force, no pressure, just access, just acceptance. They do not push, they make you step forward on your own. Because this is not about forcing surrender. It is about ensuring that when you give in, you believe it was your choice. They watch closely, intently, not just what you do, but how you think, what stirs your convictions, what keeps you awake at night. Then, without a ripple, they reflect your essence back at you. Their language is indistinguishable from your own. Their ambitions seem to align with yours. Their promises echo the aspirations you've always carried. You don't have to change, they assure you. This is only a natural step forward. It feels seamless, reassuring, almost inevitable, until the distortion begins, minor at first, barely perceptible, a slight alteration in the way you express yourself, a seemingly inconsequential shift in narrative, never demanded, only suggested. Before you can pinpoint the moment it happened, you glance behind you and realize that the future they painted was never truly yours. It was theirs all along. Observation was never passive. Every step you took was under quiet scrutiny. The walls had eyes, the silence had memory. A private thought, spoken only in the safety of your mind, finds its way into the mouth of a stranger. A pattern in your choices is mirrored back at you in ways too precise to be accidental. They call it happenstance, coincidence, anything but what it is. But you see through it. You always have. For a while, it feels like relief. The battles, the barriers, the relentless struggles, they all seem to dissolve into an open door. The very hands that once pushed you down now lift you up, offering the things you fought for, the things you were denied. But something is out of place. A sensation, subtle but persistent, gnaws at the edges of your thoughts. You dismiss it at first, chalking it up to weariness, to a lingering mistrust born from years of hardship. But the unease does not subside. The air thickens with an energy you cannot name. The space around you shifts in ways that words cannot capture. And then you notice it, the rehearsed cadence in their speech, the way their kindness is just a little too strategic, their encouragement laced with expectation. Every offer, every invitation, every whispered promise is not an act of generosity. It is a test. They watch, they measure, they wait. How much are you willing to bend? How far can they push before you resist? And when the illusion cracks, you see what was hidden beneath the gold. This was never liberation. It was a transaction disguised as triumph, a gilded chain wrapped around your freedom. The wealth, the influence, the status. It was never meant to be yours to wield, only yours to wear. The choice is stark, undeniable. Accept and surrender, or refuse and remain untamed. Because once the door locks behind you, the cost is not just in what you say or do, but in the silence you must keep. They thought they had you, thought they had laid out a path so irresistible, so perfectly crafted, that you would walk right into it without a second thought. But they miscalculated, because you were never for sale. They came with offers wrapped in gold, dressed in the language of success and destiny. But you recognized the trade for what it was: glory at the cost of your soul. A lion does not negotiate with hunters. A king does not beg to sit at a table that was built to enslave him. They expected hesitation, a moment of weakness, a flicker of doubt. But instead, they met something they could not manipulate: conviction. And that is where their game fell apart. At first, they played the role well, smiling, praising, welcoming. They called you chosen, a leader, someone too important to be ignored. Their admiration seemed genuine. Their invitations felt sincere. And for a moment, it almost seemed as if the war was over. The struggle, the resistance, the unseen battles that wore on your soul, it all seemed to vanish. But that's the thing about deception. It always comes dressed as an answer to your prayers. The moment they realized their tricks had failed, that you were not moved by wealth, that you did not crave status, that you would not bend for approval, the shift was immediate. Where once there was warmth, now there is indifference. Where once they called you a rising star, now they speak as if you never existed. The doors that once swung open so easily now close before you even reach them. The ones who used to sing your praises no longer call your name. They do not fight you with open threats, they erase you with silence, because this is their final strategy. If they cannot own you, they will pretend you never mattered. But here's the truth they never considered. You never needed their doors. You never needed their approval. They were never the ones who made you, and they will never be the ones to break you. They believe power comes from control. They believe influence comes from ownership. But what terrifies them, what shakes them to their core, is that real power cannot be bought. They have spent generations writing the rules, deciding who rises and who falls, dictating who gets to have a voice. But now, before their very eyes, their illusion is crumbling, because you walked away, and you are still rising. The system was never built for people like you. It was built for those willing to bow, for those willing to sell their fire for comfort, for those content to be powerful within the machine, rather than those who were born to tear the whole system down. Let them pretend you were never here. Let them whisper behind closed doors. Let them tighten their grip, scrambling to hold on to a world that is slipping through their fingers. It changes nothing, because at the end of the day, they are temporary. But your calling, your mission, the fire inside of you, that is eternal. Stand firm. Let them watch. The chosen do not beg for a throne. They build their own. At first, it is subtle. Missed calls, forgotten invitations, glances that do not hold as long as they once did. Then, the weight of it sharpens. The narrative shifts, rewritten without your consent. Those who once praised your name now hesitate, their words laced with a careful distance, a whisper in the right ear, a suggestion woven into conversation, and suddenly the image they helped build begins to crack under a storm they designed. They frame it as a fall from grace, an unfortunate unraveling. But you know the truth. It is retaliation for defiance. Yet their mistake is in believing their approval ever defined you. They did not create you, and so they cannot unmake you. Their dominion is over doors, not destinies. Their influence extends only as far as belief allows, and you have seen beyond the illusion. That is what unsettles them. Not your rejection, but what it exposes. Their dominion is fragile. Their control built on the pretense of omnipotence. And when the dust settles, they will realize their greatest failure was not in losing you, but in failing to break you. They present it as an honor, a rare invitation into an inner sanctum where only a select few are granted entry. A fraternity built on trust, a network woven with loyalty, at least that is how they frame it. But beneath the polished words lies something far less noble. This is not a recognition of worth. It is an assessment of utility. You are not being elevated, you are being measured. These circles do not distribute power, they consolidate it. They do not seek equals, they seek instruments. At first, it appears to be a privilege. Doors open without question, opportunities appear without struggle, alliances form with little effort. They tell you that you have been chosen, that you belong, now that you have reached their level. But the illusion unravels as you step further inside. It is not about achievement, it is about possession. They do not extend access to empower you. They do so to determine what you are willing to surrender. It starts subtly. Minor oaths, insignificant favors, agreements that seem harmless. Then the expectations shift. A moment of silence when truth is required. A concession that should not be made, a demand that grows heavier with time. You begin to notice what others ignore. The ones who resisted are cast aside, their names turned into cautionary whispers, their work quietly erased. Those who accepted remain, but something in them is missing. Their words feel practiced, their convictions dulled, their fire reduced to embers. They hold influence. They stand at the highest levels, but they are only remnants of what they once were. Because once the threshold is crossed, there is no easy way back. And when the reality becomes clear, so does their reason for seeking you out. It was never about offering protection, never about granting status. It was about neutralizing what they could not bend to their will. They came dressed as allies, but you recognized the wolves beneath the wool. They spoke in the language of elevation, of legacy, of partnership, but their hands were never reaching to lift you up, only to pull you in. They never wanted you free, they wanted you tamed. A wildfire cannot be controlled, only extinguished or contained. And when they realized they could not snuff you out, they did what they have always done. They changed their tactics. No more resistance, no more attacks in the open. Instead, they offer you a seat at the table. They offer admiration, prestige, and promises of a future so grand it almost seems like destiny. But destiny is never written in their contracts. It is written in your calling. And you were not called to be absorbed into their system. You were called to overturn it. They never saw you as an equal. They never respected your journey. This invitation is not a sign of recognition. It is a strategy. They believe they can neutralize you, not by silencing your voice, but by owning it. They have done it before. They know that when they cannot defeat something, they embed themselves in it. They do not destroy, they redirect. And yet, they do not understand you. They think you are looking for validation. They think you want a place in their empire. They think you desire what they built. But they are mistaken. You were never meant to inherit their kingdom. You were meant to bring it down. The world they rule is built on illusion, and that illusion is cracking. For too long, they dictated the game, controlling both the hero and the villain, ensuring that no matter who the world followed, the end result remained the same. They did not just build an empire, they built the opposition to that empire. They created the battle and sold both sides of the war. And now, they want you in their ranks, not because they believe in you, not because they trust you, but because they fear what happens if you remain outside of their grasp. They believe control is influence. They believe access is power. But what they fail to grasp is that real power does not need permission. They were never in control of you. They never held you in their hands. That is why they have turned from combat to conversion, from silencing you to absorbing you, from rejection to acceptance. Because they see it, the shift, the breaking, the unraveling of what they spent generations crafting. And yet they still think they can buy you. They do not know what you already understand. There is no price high enough to purchase what does not belong to them. So let them extend their hand. Let them disguise captivity in gold. Let them believe that access to their world is something you desire. It changes nothing, because at the end of the day, they are bound by the very chains they offer. And you were never meant to wear them. The chosen do not ask for a throne, they were born to command. But this time, the strategy failed. You did not accept their terms. They tried every method in their arsenal: erasure, persuasion, promises dressed in gold, and yet you refused. Their influence only holds power over those who need it, and you never did. The moment they realized you were untouchable, the facade cracked. The fear is visible now, hidden in their urgency, their shifting narratives, the forced attempts to reclaim ground that is slipping through their fingers. They have dictated the rise and fall of countless figures, designed stories, sculpted legacies, erased those who dared to step outside their framework. But they have never known how to handle someone who does not seek their permission, who does not kneel at the altar of their approval. What they fear most is not your defiance. It is the fact that it is working. You walk outside their corridors, and yet your reach grows. You reject their validation, and yet your influence spreads. They have wealth, they have visibility, they have all the trappings of power, but you have something that cannot be manufactured: truth. And truth is an unstoppable force. It cannot be buried beneath trends. It cannot be rewritten through propaganda. It cannot be tamed. Those who live by deception always believe they will reign forever. Yet history tells a different story. Thrones built on falsehoods always crumble. They know this. They feel it in every crack, forming beneath their foundation, in every shift beyond their control. They have spent lifetimes constructing an illusion of permanence, but permanence does not belong to them. The time they have left is running out, and that is why they turn to you. Not because they embrace your vision, not because they honor your strength, but because they are losing control, and they know it. They spent generations weaving illusions, sculpting reality with deception, dictating narratives, and ensuring that every rise and fall served their purpose. But they did not build you, and that makes you untouchable. What they cannot shape, they cannot control, and what refuses control becomes a threat. Their approach has shifted. Force is no longer their weapon of choice. They do not attempt to strike you down. Instead, they extend a gilded invitation. They promise security, a lasting name, a seat among those who dictate the course of history. But there is no power in surrender. Those before you knew this truth. Some were raised in luxury and walked away. Others were offered influence and chose conviction instead. And now you stand at that same crossroads. The foundation they built their empire upon, manipulation, deceit, fear, is crumbling beneath them. It was never your place to uphold it. They need you far more than you will ever need them. While their world fractures, you remain unshaken. Every attempt to lure you in, every demand for submission, every expectation of silence. You defied them all, and with each rejection, the illusion of their control unraveled further. They could dictate public opinion, shape the course of events, and buy the loyalty of many, but not yours. That is power. Not the kind they distribute, but the kind they cannot steal. Your strength was never built on wealth, never tied to their alliances, never dependent on their platforms. It is rooted in something beyond reach, something incorruptible. Each temptation resisted was a declaration. Each road declined was a victory. You stand where few have, outside their influence, beyond their reach. Not because you outmaneuvered them, not because you played the game to win, but because you refused to play at all. Their riches were a mirage, their words a chain, their dominion fleeting. And yet, you remain. Let them gather those who crave acceptance. Let them hold on to an empire that was never truly theirs. Their grip weakens with each passing moment.